Did I get any points for the dancing? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun, right? It was really sad and pathetic, but thanks for making me feel good.
I don't feel it was sad and
Wednesday,
pathetic
man.
at all. I thought it was phenomenal for a cold Wednesday morning.
You are a
Okay.
fireball, Bernie.
Oh, thanks.
There
And
you go, Derek.
Bernie, I'll make my observation
What a
this
guy.
morning.
Here we go.
Oh,
We're starting this early.
Your skin is just absolutely radiant.
Thank
I don't know
you.
what you've done, but it does. And of course, you have trimmed down somewhat. You
I
look so
have.
physically
Oh, my God.
fit,
Be careful,
and
Warren.
you're just absolutely radiant today.
that's super sweet.
Well,
Hey, she's
I'm
always
just
radiant.
being honest for a change.
Thank you, Dr. Stephen J. DeLotte. There you go.
That's
That's
the
my
secret.
secret.
Who is a partner of Dr. Mez.
See, and there you go. But seriously, look,
But
it's
seriously,
gorgeous.
folks. Wait, there's more.
Warren, you get all the points today. You're going to get extra seconds.
And the
You won the point
preceding was not a paid political
no, it
advertisement.
wasn't. But thank you. That was nice of you. Thank you.
Well, what is this $50 bill doing on his lap?
I know, right?
Why is your hand on his lap?
Y'all are crazy. All right, so it is Wednesday morning. It is time for Wingin' It Wednesday. We have our panelists in studio, Carol Ross, Warren Cottle, Stafford Barnett. We thought we were not going to see you today, but we're so glad you're here.
I don't know if it's a pleasant surprise or a bad one. I don't
Okay.
know.
All I know is I'm also impressed that everyone made it through the traffic crash. If you had to go that way on Ambassador.
Yeah.
And on Johnson.
Yeah.
That
Okay.
Crest
So
Lawn.
yeah, Johnston at Crest Lawn. So if you're coming in from Abbeville and 167 North, that is still backed up. Then if you're coming from the Cully Saloon area and you're trying to go on Ambassador Caffrey, there's a crash there. So things are really backed up from that area from Cully Saloon as you're heading towards Johnston.
And if you're in those areas trying to deliver us breakfast here, have it airlifted, to get it here ASAP. Some convenient.
West Broussard's clear. I found that out this morning.
Oh, yeah. So
you
that
went
was
all the way
clear.
around. Yeah.
he took the
And
scenic
I
route.
live on the north side out with the deplorables and the other deplorables, and it is clear sailing out there.
It is smooth sailing from that standpoint. Carol, was your drive okay?
Oh, drive was fine. Yeah.
So it was okay. Okay, good
In that
news.
new Cadillac, I bet it is.
Actually,
She didn't drive a Cadillac today.
I
Not
have
in the rain.
I have to turn in the other one.
Oh, no.
But I'll be driving the Cadillac later this morning
Oh, fantastic.
after I get rid of the other one.
I hear you.
That's hilarious. Y'all are too cute. All right, so Wingin' It Wednesday, we have our panelists.
But I love my new Cadillac. I have to tell you that. Now, if I could find out what all the bells and whistles are, it would be really great.
I got you covered,
of
Carol. We'll sit
radio-
down and do that this afternoon after
okay,
this show.
all right, good deal. Thank you, Derek.
Grab the manual. Yeah.
All right, so topic number one. So let's go there about Flynn, I guess, huh, Derek?
Yeah, this guy, Michael Flynn, if you've ever heard of him, apparently pled guilty last week to lying to the FBI about the Russia investigation. Special counsel Robert Mueller pulling that out of his hat. What are our thoughts as far as the panel goes? What are our thoughts on that and where it'll lead? Let's start off with Carol.
If this is what the special prosecutor has after months and months of subpoenaing people and actually crashing into people's homes in the middle of the night and actually having tapes from the NSA having taped having bugged the Trump headquarters under the pretext of keeping an eye on a Russian diplomat. And if this is all they have, a little bitty lie that they caught Mike Flynn in, that they already knew the truth, I would say this whole thing, this is ridiculous. For that kind of plea, that's the Martha Stewart problem. That's the James Brown, the guy here. You remember Jim Brown here in Louisiana, who former Secretary of State. Mm-hmm. What did he do? He lied to the FBI when he did not have to. He did not have to. And probably Flynn didn't have to either, might have forgotten. But the way this whole thing went down, the FBI was consulting with the transition team in the Trump White House. And so they were going back and forth and having these interviews. Nobody thought anything of it. When the FBI came back in and asked General Flynn, they wanted to talk to him, he thought it was another one of these transition team things. And so they catch him in a lie. It was a minor, I don't even know if he just didn't remember or what. They didn't tell him that this was part of the investigation. They told him nothing about that. He didn't have an attorney present. Really and truly, this whole thing is just beginning to smack of a witch hunt. They still haven't been able to prove anything in the dossier, which was supposedly that's what this was about. If Congress really wants to do the American people a favor, if Congress wants to do the American people a favor, they will turn off the funding because the lawyers won't work for nothing. And they've had plenty of time to figure out if there's been collusion. And by the way, Oh, well, I'll save it for the
You
next
can
time.
buy the way next
I'll
time,
save
huh?
it for the next time.
Okay,
Warren,
I'm over time. So.
Warren, what's your take on it?
I think that my real take is we're rapidly trying to become a banana republic, and that this is what I really hope that Congress does at some point is they do away with this law that says that you can go to prison for lying to the FBI.
Oh, really?
I mean, that is the most absurd thing I've ever heard in my life. When you turn around and look at these people, just like Carol mentioned, Jim Brown ran for governor here, former insurance commissioner, secretary of state. They called him, it didn't even make sense what they wound up charging him with. But you look at what the FBI themselves have done. When I grew up, we always thought that it was like the most pristine group that ever was. And that back in the 80s, they had the first spy that they captured, Richard Miller, who was selling Amway out of the trunk of his car and such stuff as that. Then you turn around, you had Lon Horauchi, who was a sharpshooter for the FBI, who shot the woman in the head at Ruby Ridge, standing on the porch, holding an infant in her arms. And because that the rules of engagement were somewhat fuzzy that they had come up with. And then during that course of that investigation, they found out that they had actually destroyed a lot of the information. And that guy did get charged criminally. Then you had the deputy director for counterintelligence, Robert Hansen, who was found guilty of spying for the Soviet Union for like 10 years or so. The FBI couldn't even catch him. And then you had the corruption of the crime lab, where that they have admitted to falsifying evidence, and there's been like 20% of the DNA convictions have been overturned of 390-something cases. And then on top of all that, you have the worst of all, which is J. Edgar Hoover, who was everything that he claims he wasn't, including a homosexual and a embezzler.
Stafford.
It's a couple tough acts to follow.
Yeah.
So I just tried looking up where there's been actual evidence of Mueller having NSA tapes, and I just don't know where you got that from, Carol, because there's no published data online that shows that Mueller has.
Are you sure about that? Oh my goodness!
So it sounds like
the Obama administration
same
under
thing.
the pretext.
It sounds like the same thing we heard last week about. Us.
Where do you think the unmasking scandal came from?
The North Korean rockets using American technology. It sounds like some Alex Jones stuff.
That was actually proven. I don't listen to Alex Jones. I have no idea who he is.
I don't believe that was proven at all. So that being said, Michael Flynn's son was on the block. Flynn turned state's evidence. This is his guilty plea, just like it was George Papadopoulos, for him to turn around and start giving evidence. And we've been told for quite some time now that this investigation is nothing. We now have 4 Trump officials who've been indicted, 2 of which have given guilty pleas, 2 of which are singing, right? They're given every bit of data they have. And now we've got a president who's come out and possibly implicated himself in obstruction of justice, right? Mm-hmm. So he came out and said, we know that we fired him because we knew he lied, right? And Congress immediately jumped on that. And they said, well, now we have evidence that Trump is openly admitting that he may have obstructed justice, right? So I've said it before and I'll say it again. For everybody who's sitting here saying there's nothing, where there's smoke, there's fire. I don't know. And previously I've said, I don't know that this whole thing's going to take Trump down. I think for sure it's going to take down Kushner. And I think that there's a very good possibility it'll take down Junior as well. So we now know that Kushner, lied tremendously on his background checks, and probably wouldn't have gotten the clearance that he had if he'd have been honest about it. So I think, as I've said before, and I'll say it again, I think time will tell. I think more indictments are coming. Mueller's not a dumb guy. He doesn't build weak investigations. He's going to start building a pyramid. He's going to take low-level guys and get them to turn on medium-level guys and work his way up.
All right. Thank you.
Mueller is not dumb. He is politically compromised along with all of his deputies.
That's a talking point.
And by the way, they have gotten far afield of collusion, and that's not what they're getting Manafort on. There's so many other things that they're going after Manafort in order to get to the big cheese, which is the whole thing is about impeachment. By the way, if you look at the difference, the way Hillary was treated as opposed to the way Flynn was treated, she was never put under oath. They would never, and everything. And Comey exonerated her before he even did the investigation, and he admitted that he lied to Congress. He admitted it. There's a video that proves that. By the way, Alan Dershowitz, not known as a crazy right-winger, says that under Article 2 of the Constitution, Trump can do anything he wants with anybody in his department and have no consequences for it. Thomas Jefferson did it. Abraham Lincoln did it. It's been done throughout history. And he has every right to fire whomever he chooses.
That's the same thing that
in
Nixon
his
said
department.
before he went down. That
Nixon actually did suborn perjury and obstruct justice and destroyed evidence, etc. There is no evidence of that, of Trump having done that.
All right, let's go to the phone lines and see if, we've got comment on that. Hi, you're on Wingin' It Wednesday. Did you have a comment for our panelists, please?
Well, I had a couple of thoughts there. I keep listening to the Trump hater and the Democrat machine. And, there's a saying, the Bible says, let us reason together, and you simply can't reason with Democrats. They're unreasonable. Look at what Trump is doing. Good stuff. But all they want to do is talk about some chatter over Russian interference in the elections. I could give a rat's. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your thoughts. 232-1542, 232-1542. Yes, sir.
I want to say one thing. As Stafford says, where there's smoke, there's fire, and I absolutely agree with that. And that if you look at the smoke coming out of Congress and all of the stuff they're doing, and we're talking about, they're trying to come up with this thing about obstruction of justice and all that and lying. My God, if there's anybody that has obstructed more justice and has lied more than the members of Congress, then please come up and show me who they are. And that, obstruction of justice, you bring up Nixon, obstruction of justice. What Nixon did was go out there and ask the people who headed these departments to fabricate information and to lie. And then they were paying off hush money to all of these people. There's a huge difference.
I believe that, listen, here's where I agree with you, right? I believe that if you have evidence of this stuff, I think you should bring it to Congress and bring it to Robert Mueller and have them prosecuted. But in the meantime, it's just rhetoric, right?
No, it's not just rhetoric.
No, it's
show us the proof that you have that Congress is lying. And that people are fabricating their stories to bring it.
Judicial Watch has all the emails.
Let's do it. Here we go. Okay, Trey Gowdy said, Director Comey, when Hillary Clinton said that there was no classified information on her server, was that true? No, it was.
No, it was not true.
When Secretary Clinton said, was that true? No, there were multiple devices. When Secretary Clinton said, and that goes on and on and on. But yet when it comes to that point, then we don't do anything with that. That's not lying. Well, there was no intent to mislead people. Give me a break. And then we're going into this next session, which even gets better. That's
the mass misdirection.
Let me tell you something. Right? If they weren't listening
we've got people getting prosecuted.
You're exactly right.
We've got people being prosecuted and turning state's evidence and pleading guilty to actual crimes, and everybody goes, but Hillary Clinton's emails.
What was their actual crime?
What was the actual
prosecutor?
That's actually our next topic. So
let me tell you something. Brian Ross is shameful. Oh, okay, we're getting into that one.
Yeah, because this is a two-parter on Flynn. The second part is the Brian Ross part.
Yeah, apparently Brian Ross, reporter for ABC, made a snafu on air when it comes to reporting on this issue. Yep. Carol, you touched on it. Let's start with Stafford on this one.
Yeah, so Brian Ross reported some inaccurate information and now has been barred from discussing it at all, right?
Yeah.
So hats off to their employers for recognizing somebody who couldn't do their job correctly, who was incompetent, and making it so that he couldn't be more incompetent, right?
Right.
So hats off to him.
Warren?
It's another one of those unfortunate things where that they take some news and they skew it to meet their narrative where he says, what Flynn is going to testify to. Nobody knows what Flynn's going to testify to.
Correct.
It's just the same way. It's just the same way it was when Oliver North turned state's evidence and all that, and then he was going to go in there and tell it all. And what he told, they didn't like. So then they start backing up then and wanting to prosecute him for something else. You said prosecute Hillary. That's good. Let's do it. But will they? So far, they have totally turned it down.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So far, you can't get anybody that's in justice to come up and say, we need to go ahead and prosecute these things.
So what does that say more about? Does that say more about our as a community, our desire to go out and prosecute somebody for something that they did, right? Which is one theory, or that they don't have enough evidence to prosecute her.
What it tells me, there's no way you can't say they don't have enough evidence. What it tells me is that it is a crooked organization, which I just got through outlining some of these things that the FBI has done, they've admitted to, and that they will sit there and protect people, and they do prosecutorial misconduct.
Jeff Sessions
right.
literally just said they don't have evidence to prosecute her.
Jeff Sessions is the one who should be fired right now.
Sessions may be one of the ones I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to the
gonna
phone
go to
lines
phone
real quick.
lines.
Yep. All right, hi, you're on Acadiana's Morning News. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, everybody. I guess that, on Wednesdays, I guess I'm just like every person that gets fired up in the morning when staff starts speaking. So the thing that gets me aggravated more than anything is that when it's mentioned, and it not just by Mr. Stafford, but others as well, regarding anything dealing with Hillary Clinton, that it's a distraction tactic. I handled top secret and secret letter traffic when I was in the service for 2.5 years. And if I would have been in possession after I left the Marine Corps of one specific document, it didn't matter what it was. If it was classified, top secret, secret, whatever, 5 years in prison in Leavenworth.
Mm-hmm.
There was a young man in the Navy that had signed that same document that I had signed. Everybody does. And he had 3 pictures of the inside of a submarine on his phone. Never posted it to social media, never shared it with anybody. They found out that he had those pictures, and he's serving 5 years in prison. That's 3 pictures. She had 13 documents, an unclassified server. 113. So that's 5 years per document.
Okay, all right, thank you very much, Stafford. You want to?
I agree with the caller 100%. I believe that that we have 2 systems of justice in the United States, one for everybody and one for elected officials, and it's a travesty. I actually agree with him hands down, right? And he's not the only person saying that. If she was mishandling classified documents, then she needs to be prosecuted. That being said, if there's enough evidence out there to do it, and I'll say, like I've said 100 times before, prosecute her, right? But when we talk about the Russian investigation into Flynn, everybody else, right? All this stuff that's going on, and our first response is Hillary Clinton. And it just shows how skewed our conversation is, right? Let's talk about the issue
Is it my
at
turn
hand.
to talk about Brian Ross and what happens?
It is. That's what
Thank
we're
you
getting
very much.
getting to next. Let's touch on Brian Ross. Carol, we'll wrap this up and then go to break, and then we'll get to our next topic.
All right, the very fact that Brian Ross has been implicated before in willfully misleading the people. Remember the Colorado shooting, the James Holmes that he said was a Tea Party member? He was not. He never did his homework. He has a history of jumping the gun on this to fit his political agenda, and that's exactly what he did here. President-elect Trump is perfectly legal and perfectly within his rights to tell Michael Flynn, let's make contact with the Russians, the Chinese. We make contact with all governments. As a president-elect, we have to reassure them, especially since Donald Trump was an unknown. There was no problem with him telling Michael Flynn to make contact while he's president-elect. No problem with that at all. He was well within his rights. And it seems to me that if you look at the team that Mueller has assembled, there is absolutely no question. Even the venerated New York Times calls Andrew Weissman the pit bull. What did he do? He destroyed Arthur Anderson in connection with the Enron case. Thousands of people lost their jobs, and the Supreme Court came back in a 9-0 decision that this was a made-up, trumped-up charge. And that's who Mueller has in charge of all this, raiding people's houses in the middle of the night. This has become a political witch hunt, nothing other than that. If the first thing out of the box is all he can get is a plea that he lied to the FBI, well, that's the low-hanging fruit. If that's all he can get out of Flynn right now, shame on him. Congress needs to shut off the spigot.
Okay, guys, we got to take a break. We'll come back. We got topic number 2, Wingin' It Wednesday, Bernadette Lee, Derek Albert sitting in with our Wingin' It Wednesday panelists. We've got Stafford Barnett, Warren Cottle, and Carol Ross. Thank you to everybody for joining us. Our phone-in number, if you want to be part of Wingin' It Wednesday, 232-1542.
We're live wherever.
Hit us up with information, 232-1542. That's also the same number to use for our conversation with Wingin' It Wednesday.
Thank you, Bernie, for all
May
that.
I do one particular clarification? Because Stuart has continually told me that I've been lying about the parts. Stafford's, yes, sorry. Major transatlantic defense contractor, one of the biggest players in the United States, if not NATO defense market. Those parts have been found inside Korean missiles. The reason it's so hard to find them is the Koreans rigged the missiles to blow up and to try not to have any of this show up. However, this one missile one particular one that they were able to recover. The South Koreans usually track them. They know exactly where to find them. This time they tracked it down. The thing did not blow up. They found Western parts from companies that do business in the United States and U.S. companies. So this was a CBS report several years ago, and it's not the only one. Stratfor has had other reports that I've had listeners call me and quote me chapter and verse. So Stafford, before you start calling me and Alex Jones, I have no idea who Alex Jones is. I don't give a rat's patootie who Alex Jones is. I do my own research, and that's the only way it makes it legitimate.
So I think if it was ever proven that the North Koreans were using actual missile guidance technology from the United States, it would be all over the news.
Yeah, you would think, except you have a colluding media who don't want to let that out. And by the way, may we just clarify one thing? All these people are upset about the $17 million that's been squirreled away in a separate side account that a lot of congressmen didn't even know existed to pay off sexual and other harassment claims. Well, by the way, it's an off-the-books. If a business did this as an off-the-books fund that nobody knows about except a select few, well, they would get perp walked out of there under the RICO statutes. But it's a fund that's set up off the books. When was it set up? Do you want to guess? 1995. Who was president?
Bill Clinton.
Bill Clinton, exactly. Thank you very much.
Now, moving on.
See, Stafford, I do my own research.
There's a lot of topics we could touch on, but we're going to go to this next one, which was already touched upon. So we're going to keep it kind of short when it comes to our panelists. But let's talk about the Clinton emails. Apparently, a fired FBI official was at the center of both the Flynn and Clinton dossier controversies. That person, Peter Strzok, has been revealed. Is this a smoke and mirrors thing to take the eyes off of the Mueller investigation, off of the Flynn guilty plea, or is this a story that really needs to be looked into? Stafford?
I think I've kind of covered most of this. If they can find a way to prosecute Hillary Clinton, by all means, go for it. I believe that justice should be blind and that it should be served on everybody equally. And it's frustrating to think that what I've said may be true, right? Which is that there are two different justice systems for everybody. And I think that I agree with Carol about the money being put aside. I believe that if you're going to use taxpayer money to settle sexual assault claims or sexual abuse claims, that we should know about it. Hats off to the Democrat Party for getting that congressman, I don't remember his name, to resign here recently. Conyers, yeah. And look, we're in different times. I mean, the RNC is now pumping money to a child molester in Alabama. And you just sit there and go, scratch your head. Like, I hats off to Jeff Flake for sending a check to Moore's opponent that said, country over party, right? So here's what I think, right? I believe in country over party 100%. And while I'm not, as opposed to people's beliefs, linked to any party, I'm a registered independent, and I vote across the board. I believe that if Hillary Clinton is guilty of something, sign me up. And Jeff Sessions has come out and said under oath, Jeff Sessions was a member of the Trump campaign team, and arguably a very staunch conservative. And if he had evidence, I think he'd find a way to prosecute him.
Warren?
I think, first of all, nobody really wants to prosecute her because it's such a monumental task. And the fact is, would they ever get a conviction? Mm-hmm. Probably not. It's just almost impossible to prosecute some of those really high-powered people like that. And that's why that they will tell you why they don't ever go after the big kingpins on Wall Street. When Elizabeth Warren tried to get them to tell, how many these CEOs and such stuff for these banks have you ever prosecuted? And they said, well, really none, blah, 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 But getting back to this other thing about is this a diversion? I think that certainly it's a diversion. It's a diversion to try to keep the smokescreen going, to do anything possible to get Trump out of office. If they can't get him impeached, if they can't get him out of office any other way, they're going to try to kill him. Whether they will or not, they will certainly try, because these fascist socialists that you got up there, they're wanting to do anything they can to keep their train from being derailed. We're going down that track to their goal line, and they will do anything they can, because it is huge, huge things at stake here. You have trillions of dollars a year at stake. and they don't want to see it vanish. You know that you look at this thing that what they have done is that it's prosecutorial misconduct. If you look back at the River Birch deal in New Orleans with Henry Mouton from Abbeville, who was indicted and all that for government misconduct and bribery and fraud and this, that, and other, you had two of the prosecutors that were caught sending tweets and such stuff out anonymously about this case. And then when it was found out who they actually were, the U.S. Attorney, Jim Linton, resigned. They resigned, and all of those charges were dropped. They said that the prosecution is tainted, the charges are dropped. And that's the same way that I look at this Mueller thing. It is tainted from the word go. They have proven that. Drop it, and let's move on with something else.
Carol, Peter Strzok, this whole investigation, where does this leave us?
Well, you know, you look at the emails that he sent to his paramour about, and they both hated Trump, and most of the people who were involved who are the attorneys. Mueller has about 16 attorneys working for him. About 8 of them contributed to the Hillary campaign and were vehement anti-Trumpers. The other ones didn't contribute, but were all anti-Trumpers. So the whole thing it really smacks. I mean, we're weaponizing policy differences, and Hillary. You know, I think it would be very difficult to prosecute her. And in fact, I think I kind of agree with Dershowitz. At this point in time, let's move on. Drop this thing, drop the other, come down. But these people will not let it go. It is cognitive dissonance for them. They cannot accept the fact that Trump is the president, and it's totally destroying them. And it makes them do crazy things like Brian Ross, like Joy Behar, like these folks over at CNN. They want to hang on to it. Van Jones caught on tape telling someone that it's a nothing burger. The Russia thing is a nothing burger, but he was told by the head of the news division to keep it up, Russia, 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 because it pumps the ratings with their core base. You know, he's on tape saying that. It is. Look at Rosenstein, Weissman, Strzok, Mueller. Now there's this new woman involved, Jeannie Rhee. I mean, they have evidence all over the place. And a good deal of it has been uncovered by Judicial Watch. Judicial Watch doesn't care whether you have a D or an R behind your name. They just go after corruption. And they're the ones that I really credit with getting all this information out.
All right. Well, thank you, panelists, on that. We're going to move on to our next topic after this break, and we'll be right back with Wingin' It Wednesday. We have a few minutes left this morning on Wingin' It Wednesday. We're going to touch on a local topic that has been talked about for a few months now. Last night at the bi-monthly LCG meeting, the council voted unanimously to pass a resolution that would extend health care under LCG's health insurance plan to the surviving family members of officers, police officers and firefighters killed in the line of duty. Is that something that we needed to look into? Of course, since Corporal Michael Middlebrook was killed, it has been an issue. Carol, let's start with you. What's your take on this one?
Well, just from a PR standpoint, the optics of it were terrible the way it first came out, you know, where the LCG could have been a little more feeling, a little more, you know, laid back on some of their original responses. And I do agree the attorney for Ms. Middlebrook might have gotten a little too exercised about what happened. I think there were problems of communication on both sides. I am glad to see that it's finally resolved as I would have resolved it. I think this is a reasonable thing to do because folks who give their lives in service to their community, I think their families deserve maybe a little special consideration.
Warren, what do you take on it?
Before I comment on it, I want to say one thing about Carol brought up about the 1995, whenever that slush fund was created. 1995, you will have to admit that Republicans did control Congress, and Newt Gingrich was Speaker of the House, and he was at that time carrying on a fling with his secretary, who later on became his wife. So, I mean, they may have had a real reason why they wanted to put that.
They took over in 95 or 96?
What?
Took over Congress in 95 or 96?
Well, he got elected in 94 when they took it over. So they took it over in 95. So, anyway, I mean, that's just, I'm fair and balanced.
Yeah, there you go.
I just want everybody to know
Warren
that.
is fair and balanced.
Always fair and balanced. Now, getting back to this thing about the...
Middlebrook and the benefits.
You know, I don't really know where I come down on all that stuff. Is where do you draw the line on, you know, for our people, our first responders and whatever, that the school teachers get the same thing? If an officer gets killed in a car wreck, you know, rather than being shot, does the same thing apply there? Or What I've said before, the highway workers, if somebody's out there putting up the signs and all, which is really a front line of defense for us, putting up barricades for a flood, and they get run over, killed, or whatever, does the same thing apply there? So where do you draw the line? Who all does this cover? That's what it needs to be fair across the board is what I'm trying to say. And that I don't want to take anything away from anybody who's got anything due to them or coming to them. But, when you start singling people out and say, well, this group is better than the other group, I think we're really treading on some thin ice.
Stafford.
I think the big differentiator between police and fire department and the guys working the highway is the implied risk of the job, right? The highway guys don't have to carry a gun to defend themselves for a living. So, and they're not running into burning buildings. I applaud LCG and Mayor Robideau for going out and doing what they did. I've said it before and I say it again. I think being a police officer is a very, very hard job. And I'm thankful that in our community we have guys who are willing to risk themselves for the protection of me and my family and everybody in this room. And I'm thankful that we have a council and a mayor who's done the right thing. I agree with Carol. I think that the attorney for Officer Middlebrook's family may have been a little zealous in the beginning. And I think he was acting in the best interest of his client, to be honest with you.
Allison.
Okay, thank you. And I think that LCG was probably legally required to not respond, right, or legally advised to make no comments because they knew that whatever solution that was going to have to happen was going to take some time. Look, we as a community we got caught in a bad situation. We hadn't had anybody killed on the watch in a very, very long time, and I'm thankful for that as well. And hopefully we don't have to use this fund again for a long time, right?
Good point.
So to the first responders out there, know that I'm thankful for you guys, and I hope that you guys stay safe.
All right, we have one more topic left in about 3 minutes, so we're going to keep it to about 30 seconds apiece, but we're going to use the dirty R word again, rededication. Would you be in favor of rededication of another already existing property tax that would fund adding about 20 to 40 officers to Lafayette PD? We've just been talking about first responders. Carol, 30 seconds.
Well, have they asked for that?
Not yet.
Do we have any statistics on, what community, how many police officers community our size have? I'd like to see a lot more research about this. We have a sheriff's department for Lafayette Parish. We have city police, and we have all the smaller municipalities have police departments. I really want to see some numbers statistically as to whether this is the right thing to do, and I'd like to hear from the chief of police. I'd like to get a full discussion before I make any statement about that, because believe me, right now I'm all about the roads and the bridges.
Yeah.
Apparently, the Lafayette PD is understaffed.
When we spoke
they just added about 16 more, correct, through that federal grant?
Right.
That is correct. When we spoke with Toby Aguilard at our last opportunity, that was several weeks ago, the amount that he spoke with us about was 20 to 40. So that's where kind of that question came from. And it was a comparison of 30 years ago to today.
Right.
And we have the same amount of officers. But obviously our population has increased.
Has grown, yeah.
Warren.
Okay.
Understaffed according to whom? And you just mentioned the chief of police, and I'm like, Carol, I said, first of all, let's sit down and take a look at what do you need? Are you meeting the criteria that you need? I don't really know, but I know one thing that I don't want to go into any more rededications and pulling money away from this and pulling money away from that. But let's look at what do we really need with the police department. I saw a bicycle wreck one time at Girard Park. Two people ran together, one adult, one child. And the child had some skint knees. And here comes an ambulance, 3 police cars, and on and on and on. Now, my point is, my God, how many times did we have wrecks when I was a kid and we never even had a policeman show up, let alone an ambulance? If an ambulance had shown up, my mother would have had a heart attack. And so, we get into this thing about we got to grow for the sake of growing. We have to increase it. That's a characteristic of a cancer cell. And that's all we ever hear from government is we have to have more. We got to have more people, more money.
Stafford, wrap this one up for us, please.
I haven't seen anything to indicate that the taxes dedicated to police and fire department is underfunded or not proportionally bringing in the right amount of money. So I stand with these guys on it. If we were to show that there was a major deficit and we were in a bind, I think I'd support something like that. But I don't think it's nearly on the level that we had with underfunding of the drainage problem that we had. So at this point, I'd say I don't support it.
Well, that has been Winging It Wednesday for this week. We'd like to thank our panelists, Carol Ross, Warren Cottle, and Stafford Barnett for yet another inciting episode of Winging It Wednesday.
Bernie, I got to tell you, I'm so sorry I wasn't there last night because I understand it was really a special evening.
It was. So
for all our first responders.
For first responders, it was a nice evening.
Yeah, you know what? I just want to read something because this is what I would have said if I could have made it. Heather McDonald has written a great book called The War on Cops, and she delves into the statistics, the real statistics about what's going on. And in her book, she concludes that no government agency is more dedicated to the proposition that Black Lives Matter than today's data-driven, accountable police departments. So kudos to you guys and gals.
Yes, thanks to the first responders. All right, Stafford Barnett, Warren Cottle, Carol Ross.
Have a great week. Stay safe.
Thank you, Bernie.
So
Bye,
much.
Bernie.